Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? I guess, can everybody hear me okay over this rather loud shirt? It's probably the test. So welcome, hope everybody's back and fed and well. So we're going to talk today in the after dinner slot about, I guess, a challenge that we must all be facing. And that challenge is trying to drive the agenda, trying to further the agenda and the criticality to our organizations of content. And I guess the slightly controversial part of this is that I feel we may be the architects of some of our own difficulty. So we're going to talk today about an approach that may help with that and stop us causing our own problems and help us to make content as important as the title kind of suggests. I've got something that I think works, that I feel like it's worth sharing with people who are trying to do similar things to me. Won't apply to everybody, but kind of why not go out here at an event like this and try and talk to people about a different approach. We're not talking about strategy. There's a place for strategy. So to Doug's point earlier, somebody has to be defining the why, otherwise no one will engage with the direction that we're taking. But the strategic planning process just doesn't fit anymore, despite the fact that we're always doing it. So by the time you've bulletproofed the idea and been round and round and round the cycle, actually, the one thing I guarantee you at the end of that process is the need to do whatever you were planning to do has changed. The longer it takes, the more likely it is to have changed. And it doesn't fit with how we kind of want to work and operate. So we want to be responsible human beings, and we want to be empowered, and we want to make a difference and take things on. What we don't want to do is justify something that's really, really bloody obvious and should be something we're doing anyway. So we want to kind of move forward. So what's that got to do with today? I think by indulging in the game and kind of taking part in it, we make a couple of big mistakes. We either talk about content like it's a thing, something kind of akin to or acknowledged with all of the other things that are going on, the crowded lift scenario, or we try and change all of the approach. And they're both kind of fundamentally flawed. Content is far too important to be talking about it as an individual thing. Okay, it's connected. I'm hoping I'm going to demonstrate a bit. It's connected to everything that you want to drive. So I would much rather be talking about our customers and a way of driving success than talking about content individually. So to try and demonstrate that point a minute, a couple of people shout out, what's the most important thing to your customers? That's the shout out. What's the, somebody, anybody?
What's the most important thing to your customers?
Experience, products, profit. Okay, your customers are interested in profit. Okay, shout some more out, help me out here. Answers, right. You don't have to look very far, usually the first answer, but no further than the third, to get a direct and tangible link to what it is your customers need with the content that you provide. So nobody talks about content, but it's that important. So I come from a product background where we're selling products. Answering their questions is absolutely super critical. And in the environment and the world that we're in today, the only way to do that is with the information that we provide. So let's talk about customer answers and information that we provide to them. Let's stop talking about the thing that it is, which is content. So based on that, you all know certain things to be true. So when we were going about this and making the change, I was certain I knew what our customers need. And Forrester kind of backs this up in the environment that I was in. So they say, customers will browse, will identify products in an area where or with organizations and companies that give them a broad product offer. So that's their decision-making process in the B2B environment. And it's why there's a shift in the B2B environment from people searching on Amazon to people searching on Google to people searching on Amazon, because it's just about the breadth of product offer. But then when it comes to what they want to do in their decision-making process for making a purchase, it's information, it's problem solving, and it's credibility around the products that you sell. So this is all fairly obvious. We speak to customers, I know this. There's a ton of fabulous examples out there of the type of content that we needed to be creating. So that thing that I know to be true isn't a huge leap for me to kind of charge off and start making. Not at all. Now, in the organization, there are other people who also know things to be true. So, competing ideas and projects around getting our customers to purchase as they go through a search experience. Yeah, it's kind of true, but in terms of understanding that outside marketplace, it only works for our existing customers because they've become quite transactional. It doesn't get us any new customers. So taking on board and driving that kind of content forward in the team just makes sense. Now, we had a strategy, and it's running through the process, and it's moving forward, and we're playing the game that I've described right at the top of this talk and presentation. But it's what happened in parallel that's really, really important in this phase. So I'm not suggesting to you by getting on and doing, you're going to go from a terrible experience lacking what the customers need to perfect overnight. But I do believe in this idea of marginal gains. So it's this philosophy. It's been around for ages and ages, but I guess where it's kind of most famously been applied was the GB cycling team. So Dave Brailsford, that ran the team, believed in this idea of marginal gains. And where he kind of started was, if we break down everything we do into its component part and only improve each of those things by 1%, the sum of them is huge. So, and once it went from the technology, the bikes in this case, into the philosophy around people, you start to see it become all pervasive. So they are willing to take on small changes that they believe will make a difference. And the best example in all of that I really like, because it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, they carried their pillows around with them when they went to training camp. So pillows, cycling, kind of doesn't make any sense. But the principle was, the better night's sleep that you have with your own pillow, the better you'll train the following day. And it's easy in sports, right? So this idea of getting on doing and focusing on lots of little things is easy, because quite simply, if you don't buy into the philosophy, then you're probably off the team, and somebody that does will follow behind you. So in business, the idea around this is for you to set the example. So you know what to be true from your customer's point of view, so get on and do it. Drive it forward, set the example, work with the people who believe to begin with, and watch that permeate around your organization as people get excited and buy into the things that you want to do. And then couple that with good information. So in really simple terms, let people know the effect that it's having. So you're starting small, but give them that feedback. So, and do it in really simple terms. So these pictures are very, very deliberate. You know, in our world, measurement is incredibly complex, and you know, kind of I don't know why we do it, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So tell the people that are responsible for content, more people are looking at our products. Tell them more people are buying our products. Tell them less people say our content sucks. And the more that you do that, the more that you will build, the more of these marginal gains will take hold and capture. And then the point about this is when other people will start to notice in your organization. So at this stage, you haven't talked about content, you haven't talked about the things that you need, you've just made a difference, and it's growing and it's snowballing. And then, excuse me, if they're not taking notice, then this is the time that you need to make them take notice. So nobody cared when we were doing this particularly about our content, but they loved the fact that 15% more people were moving from search into the product page because of the things that we were doing. And this is kind of the point of where we get to then. So at that point, instead of you pitching, instead of you selling, instead of you talking about this nebulous, disconnected thing called content, all of a sudden they're talking to you, and what they want to know is, how do I get more? How do I get lots more? And how do I get it yesterday? So all of a sudden, you've created an environment in your organization or with your partners where people are pulling on the thing that you do, instead of you trying to sell it into the place. Now, a note of caution. So, with this newfound attention, with this newfound power, becomes great responsibility. So at this stage, the easiest thing in the world would be to ride into the office on the good ship told you so, firing smug faces around the place to prove that you're right all along. So you can, right? This is your choice. We're all grown-ups, empowered environment, responsible behavior, and all of that sort of thing. But actually, this is when it becomes very, very important for you in particular to stay really focused. So at the point at which we'd got their attention and we were driving content forward, now I would have loved to have banged in a new flash, shiny content management system. I could have done a ton of really cool stuff with videos and images and all of those sorts of things. But actually the point was our value was coming from increasing the depth of our content. And our people were working incredibly hard to increase the depth of our content, answer our customers' questions. So we'd decided upon that, we knew it was what customers needed, and we were driving it forward. And this is the point where marginal gains starts to slow down and you need to invest and you need to build capability. So with that backdrop, taking some responsibility on, we left the other things alone and we focused in 2 areas. So we gave them capability that allowed them to create more content, showed them how good it was going to be, helped them keep it at a high, consistent, high quality level for their customers. And the other thing we needed to focus on, we needed our product hierarchy to be more flexible. So instead of all of the things we could have done, we focused on those 2 things, managing the taxonomy and being able to create lots more great, consistent content. And this is a rare environment. So talking about culture is it's a whole other soapbox for another day. But I guess the point from that presentation I'll bring into this is, if you think about the time at which you need capability, if you think about that as investing in your people, not in technology, then it drives a completely different perspective. So it puts you in a situation where actually the change management agenda is really straightforward. People are valuing what you're giving them. If you think about your own experience, how many times have you been kind of on the end of a project that's going to transform your world, it's going to make things much, much easier for you, and actually it does none of the above. So when you think about it like this, you're overlaying support and capability on some success that you've already had with a real focus on what you're doing. It just makes the change management investment so much easier. And then in that environment, we're not related, by the way. That's not my pappy. In this environment, as you're going through this, the other important thing is to manage the narrative. Okay, and what I mean by that is our world is full of amateur speculators. Okay, in the world of content, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's bloody got one. So what I mean by this is manage the narrative and consider your center of excellence expertise. So if this was easy, it would already be done. And if these people who had these opinions knew better than you, then they'd be the ones doing it. So have the courage and the confidence to see this cycle through and continue with your journey. So I'm not prescribing all of this for everybody in every environment per se. But what I'm trying to do is show you an option to consider that's different to the traditional ways of working. Those ways drive frustration, they're difficult, so it's always worth giving something different, like I said, like change, and I'm an agitator. And I've described it in a fairly oversimplistic way, maybe a little bit agriculturally. So, I'm going to close soon and then open this up for the debate that inevitably it kind of drives. You're probably still going to have to do the presentation to the executives to get the funding for the bit that comes next and all of those sorts of things. But what I like about this approach is you're doing it with context. So you're talking to them about something they already know about. And you're using the customer impact as an advocate for the work that you want to do. If you've been successful commercially, then you're already in a position where you can go to them with the funding to pay for your own initiative. So it just changes the dynamic substantially. And whilst they might not know what it is that you're asking them for, they're going to want it because they know that you've driven some success. And just to kind of close that out with some tangibles, there was some research done by WBR, who run Internet Retailer, some of you might know, and they were talking about the B2B sector, and they talked about a number of maybe something like 65%, a really high number of organizations who had been stuck at the same level of online maturity for the last 3 to 4 years. So think about that. So they've done the digital journey, they've invested, they've followed the traditional route, and they're stuck. And the reason that they're stuck, the reason they believed that they were stuck is because they hadn't affected a culture change. What they'd done is delivered a project. And content and your transformation is too important for it to be a project. At the risk of coming across like a right smart ass now, following this approach, we were able to drive a key journey for us in the organization that I did this kind of last. We drove a 15% increase in sales in the search and buy journey for customers using this approach. But actually, more importantly for me, we shifted the customer dissatisfaction, so dissatisfaction level. We moved it from 31% dissatisfied customers to 5% by doing this. And the team that we worked with, when I took the team over, I don't like employee surveys because it's about people and they come out numerically, but there isn't a lot of other ways of measuring it. So they went from being only 42% engaged with us and the organization and the team they were in to 79% following this approach. So not prescribing it, it's an idea for you guys to kind of kick around and see whether you want to work, but I believe in it because it worked for us on that human element of the customer side and the people in my team's approach. And with that, in the spirit of it being a debate, I am done. Does anybody have any questions or challenge?
First, does anyone have applause for Alan Miller?
Thank you.